Hi, hello, vanakkam, and welcome to yet another episode on Little's Law YouTube channel. Today in this video, let us see two important topics. The first thing is, I have got a question from one of our friend. So the question goes like this. So after recording is completed, should the proxy settings that you enabled when recording be turned off, or it should be on when playing back or executing the script? Can you please clarify? So this was the question, and this question or this doubt we might all have got during our initial days of our performance testing, where we would be creating a script and we are not sure whether the script might run back or the script might execute if we don't enable the proxy. So why don't we just have the question? So let's try and see what happens between the proxy settings, and does it make any change, or what really happens during that particular proxy change. And the second thing is, we will see about this simple controller. And before that, I would request you to subscribe to my channel, Little Slaw YouTube channel. If you are not subscribed yet, please like, comment, and ask your questions. Share the video with your friends. Thank you. So with that, we'll go to the video. So first, let's create a script. So to do that, we'll have to add a thread group. Then we'll have to add the samplers, the preprocessors, and the other components. So let's add them one by one. I'm adding the header manager, the cookie manager, let's now add the test script recorder. So this settings will help us to record the script. We have seen about this in detail in our previous video. So let's now do the proxy settings before we record the script. So here in the Internet Explorer, I'm going to the Internet options, and here at the LAN settings, I'm keeping the proxy as localhost and 8888, and the same proxy will be here in the global settings in the JMeter under this HTTPS test script recorder. So just make sure that we have the same proxy, since this is the gateway that we use to reach the internet or the network. So we are having the same internet, the same network. I'm clicking on OK, and now we can start the recording. And before that, let's create start, and let's create start. So let's start the recording now. I'm clicking on OK. So now the proxy is enabled and I'm starting the recording. So now here I'm recording the first page, and now the second transaction, and now the third transaction. And I'm selecting an item, so which is the fourth transaction. And then I'm coming back to the return to fish, which is the fifth transaction. Then back again to the main menu is the sixth transaction. So with that, I'm closing my recording. So clicking on stop. So now we have recorded the scripts, and that we can see it here. So we could see all the steps that we have recorded have come here. So here we can see the fish, all the images, the fish transaction, and whatever the fish that we have selected in the action. So all these items have got selected. So let's now replay the script and see whether the proxy is working properly or not. So I'm adding the view results tree here. So I have added the view results tree, and now I'm executing the script. So before that, let's save the script. So here we can see all the transactions are passing. So here we could see all the transactions have passed successfully. So which means that even without enabling the proxy, all the application will work fine since we use the controller that we have enabled in the proxy settings. But there is one more thing which we have to remember is now if I open or if I try to access the internet, it won't work. And the reason is we have changed the proxy settings to localhost, and that is the reason we will not be able to access any of the external network connections. But since we have the settings set up properly in the internet explorer with the proxy settings, so we were able to execute the test. So just remember, even without making any of the proxy change, the test might run via the localhost, and we won't be able to reach the internet since we did not make any change in the local settings. So let me make the change. So we are not able to uh, reach the internet without changing the local host. So I'm changing the settings now. And now let's run the test and see. So when we run the test again, all the pages will work fine since we have enabled the proxy settings, and we will be able to reach the internet via the JMeter, and we can also reach the internet since we have changed the proxy settings. So this is what we understood. So we will be able to record and execute the test when we are in the proxy settings that we are under the port, and with the browser we will be able to record using the JMeter if we are in the same port, and to come back or to reach the internet after the recording, we will have to disable our proxy settings so that we can have our normal execution. We can use our browsers to reach the internet. So I believe you would have find the answers now. So thanks for asking that question, because many of us would have that doubt in our initial days. So thanks again for asking that question. So now let us see what is a simple controller. So simple controller is nothing but it's not any logical controller or anything that it is similar to some controllers like a if controller or while or any other logical controllers. So this simple logic controller actually help us to organize our samplers and any of the other logic controllers. So this is not like other logic controllers, like providing any functionality beyond other than storing the requests. So first let's see how to add a simple controller. So to add a simple controller, we have to go to the thread group, and under this we'll have to go to the add the logic controllers, and under this we'll have to select the simple controller. So this simple controller will act just as a storage service. There is no any other logical action that it would bring or any dynamic change it would bring. So a simple example which I'm going to do is I'm going to record the script under this simple controller. So I will name this as script 1, and while I'm recording the script I can make the change as script 1. So whatever I record the script, the first script will come under the script 1, and then for the grouping I'm not grouping any of these samplers. So let me tell you why. So if I'm not adding or if I'm not grouping them into sampler, I can bring them under a simple controller. So let me do that for you. So let's now record another script. Before that, we'll change the settings. So I'm changing the settings back to localhost. So just remember, using JMeter, we will be able to reach the internet. And I'm starting the script now. So let's record the first step here, which is returning to the main menu. And number 2 is I'm trying to reach the dogs product. Then under 3, I'm selecting one of the product, and then the fourth product. And now I'm returning to the main menu. So now we have recorded the scripts. I'm stopping the recording. So here we could see all the steps have come under the simple controller. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to group the script or the steps or the transactions into a simple controller. So to do that, what I'm doing is I'm going to right click on the simple controller on the script 1, and I'm going to add a simple controller and drag it, drop here. So these steps, whatever that comes under 1, I'm dropping it to the simple controller, and then I'm adding another simple controller, which will be the second transaction. So same way, I'm going to create multiple simple controllers, and I'm going to drag and drop the transactions inside that. I can even add this simple controller as a parent. So I'm doing that now. So that will be the parent of this particular transaction. So in that way, I'm creating multiple simple controllers. So there are multiple ways to add the controllers. We can either add or we can even insert the simple controllers as the parent. In fact, if we want to add for multiple transactions, we can either do this way, so that those two transactions will come under a simple controller. And then for the final step, for the final transaction, I'm adding the simple controller. So now I'm naming the transactions here to get a clear understanding. So I'm just now, for the namesake, I'm adding it as 1 and 2. So now we have 10 different transactions. So let me add a sampler here, or sorry, a listener here, which is the view results in table. So this will show us the response times or whatever the time that we get. Let me add a summary report as well. And let us run this script here. Before that, let me disable the other transactions. So now here we can see separately. So here we can see that even though we have brought the transactions inside the simple controller, again, they just act as a storage and they don't come as the transaction name. So to do that, we have the other controller, that is the transaction controller, and let's see how to do that. So to change to the different controller, we'll right click and we'll change the controller to transaction controller. So now we have changed these controllers to transaction controller. So let me change the other controllers as well. So on the top, we can see what controller are we using. So now let's change all the controllers to transaction controller. So we have changed all the simple controllers to transaction controller, and let's now run the script and see how does it works. And before that, let me clear all the results and let's run the script. And here we could see the transactions and the transactions controller as well. So this will help us to understand the response times of whatever the transactions that comes inside. Say for example, if in here we could see the transactions for each of these transactions, but as a consolidated transaction, we could get the transactions here. These are the nested elements here. So we could get the overall performance time. And here we have another option. So we have two options here under the transaction controller, that is generate parent sample and include duration of timer and pre-post processors in generate sample. So this will include all processings within the controller scope and not just the samples. So let's now try how does it work. So initially we have got the response times of all the transactions, the elements that are inside the transaction controller, and let's now run and see how does it work. So here we could see we have we have made this change in the previous test. Okay, so now we have enabled these checkboxes for all the transaction controllers. With this, we could see only the response time of the controllers and not the samples that are inside the script. So let's now run and see how does it work. So now we could see the responses that have passed, and we could see that in the results table as well. We could see only the parent controller or the consolidated or the overall time taken for the elements. Even in the summary report, we could see the average response times of the transaction first, second, third, and fourth till the end. So when enabling this check boxes, so they generate the sample times that includes all the times for the nested samplers. And there is one more thing. So if any of the transactions that have failed inside this particular transaction controller, then these transactions will fail. These transaction controllers will pass only if all the elements inside the controllers have passed. So just a quick recap. So we have three attributes. So one is the name of the transaction, and the second element is the generate parent sample. So when checked, or when we check this box, the sample is generated as a parent of the other sample. Otherwise, the sample is generated as an independent sample like we see earlier. And we have the second element, which is including the duration of timer and the pre-post processes in generated sample. So this will include the duration of timer and whatever the pre or post processes that we have created in the sample. So let's uncheck this and we'll do a test, or we'll do a check and see how does it work. So just clearing the box. I'm running the test again to do a quick check. So here we could see the response times of the element inside the controller. So with that, we come to an end. So far we have seen a question from one of our friend that what happens to the proxy that we have set while recording the script. And next we have seen about the simple controller, how to add a simple controller in the thread group. So it goes like this way. So add a logic controller and then a simple controller. And then we have seen what is a simple controller and why is it used. So simple controllers does not perform any logical actions. They are just a storage controller. So they just store the transactions or whatever the processors or logic controllers that we have. So inside a simple controller, we can add any of the samplers or logic controllers or assertions, timer, preprocessor, postprocessor, config element, and listener. So we can add any of these elements inside a simple controller. We can even add think times to the children. We can apply naming policy, can even change the controller. So in that way, we have changed the controllers from the simple controller to a transaction controller, and we have executed a script, and that has showed us the response times of the elements inside the transaction controller and the parent as well. So to see the consolidated or the overall response time of each controller, we have enabled this checkbox under the generate parent sample. So that has generated the overall response times or the overall time taken by each of these elements inside the transaction controller. So with that, we have come to an end. We will meet in another interesting video in our next session. Until then, it's bye bye from Vasant Shanmugam and Little Sla.